Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the GuildMag Podcast. We are back with two brand new faces and the beautiful me. We are back at a new time now, Sundays 8 PM GMT / 1 PM Pacific time. If you're in the UK, remember we're still on daylight savings time, so that is 9 PM UK time for the next couple of weeks. And joining me for now and for the foreseeable future is Sandra and Aaron.
Hello.
Say hi, guys.
Hello.
I'm famous now.
Now you can hear
you
us.
are. So, yeah, we are back and we are raring to go. We've got so much to talk about today. Had the third beta weekend this week. We've had the druid up for testing. There was TwitchCon last weekend, which we're going to touch on. Guild Week was also this week. We're going to cover that on next week's show, purely because there's so much to talk about this week as it is. We don't want to cram too much into the next hour. But before we begin, would you two like to introduce yourselves to everyone as the new permanent co-hosts?
All right. Well,
do you want to go first, Sandra?
Sure. I am Sandra. I'm the content manager over at GuildMag. And if you've seen me on streams for us during like our marathon beta weekend 2, and if you see me on the website, you'll see me as Miko. And that's me.
Thank you.
And I make the righty things on the blog, so that's fun. No, I'm a writer for GuildMag. I do the Dragon Hunting weekly column, which is a kind of a role-playing column about the war in the Silver Wastes, preceding the expansion, and I do articles mostly every week about this, that, and the other, lately reporting on mostly Heart of Thorns news. And I repped us at PAX Prime, which was really fun.
Yes,
Hey.
you did.
So, that was Sandra and Aaron. They're going to be joining me every week for the next however long the podcast goes on for, and I promise we won't be away for as long as we were this time.
And we'll have our technical stuff together.
Yeah, I tend to make that promise every time the podcast goes on hiatus for a couple of months, but I promise this time it won't. So my internet's not that great at the moment, so Sandra's running the technical side. So if things go wrong,
I'm sorry.
We're just going to roll with it. It will be me, hopefully, within the next couple of episodes, back to the way things were. But on with this episode. So as always, as with the previous podcast, we're going to kick off with some gem store news.
Woohoo.
So Halloween is coming. It is October already. This year's just flown by for me, and I can't believe it's October already.
Yeah.
So it's confirmed by Colin at TwitchCon and Gail Gray on the forums that Halloween will return alongside Heart of Thorns release. On sale right now is the Leech outfit. Leech? Not the Leech.
Lich?
No, it's
Leech outfit.
It's definitely the Leech outfit.
And Halloween weapons are available in the from Blackline Weapon Specialists. Over the next couple of weeks, there will be more Halloween items to come, including some new ones that we don't yet know what they will be. The question is the content going to be the same as the past 2 years? Because last year, content was the same, and I don't know about you, but I didn't really play it that much because, it's kind of like a been there, done that sort of a thing.
I played it last year because I find it fun, even though it was still the same stuff with the Bloody Prince. And mostly because I really wanted the... it wasn't a witch outfit last year, it was something else, but it was a cool outfit, so I wanted it. So I needed to get candy corn for it.
The Hexed outfit, I believe.
Hexed, that's what it was called.
Yeah,
we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I did it last year to farm for fat stacks of cash, because the trick-or-treat bag event in the Labyrinth is mad money.
Yeah.
So that's really the only reason I did it, though.
You do like making that gold.
I do. The real question is, will they decorate? Because they've got a new LA. So if they decorate, the decorations will have to be new.
I want to
see. If Halloween comes back, you can't not decorate.
Well, we said that last year about Winter's Day, and look what they did.
Oh, that is true.
That was such a disappointment.
We could be seeing like a decorated Silver Wastes camp, or just like one of the little.
Hey, that would benefit me. That would benefit me more than Lion's Arch would, because I spend way more time in Silver Waste than Lion's Arch.
You do.
Still don't know how you do that. how you spend so much time in there still.
It's been almost a year of just nothing but
I was about to say it must be getting on for like a year now.
Yeah.
I know, and you don't get bored.
Mm-mm.
That's good.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good.
So yeah, Halloween's returning. We
Honestly.
may do a Halloween podcast. Think about it. I haven't actually thought about it yet, but it would be fun to do one like we did last year. Get you guys to drink some disgusting
Or
concoctions
disgusting
like I
things.
got to.
Well, Halloween this year is on a Saturday.
Are you gonna dress up, Rowan?
I might. Did I dress up? No, I got a mask last year, didn't I?
You did.
I don't
you
need
got
to
a
dress
mask.
up for Halloween.
Revenant Ritlock. It's waiting for you.
Oh,
There you
I might
go.
have to. I might have to. We'll see. We will see.
There you go.
So, we've got so much to talk about today, so let's just get straight into it then. So last weekend was TwitchCon and 2 days of fun-filled ArenaNet television.
Yes.
We got a load of new information and some fluff filler pieces as well, like the A Taste of Tyria with Jennifer Hale that Sandra had a particular opinion on.
I enjoyed the cooking show. I wasn't all that. I don't know why you say that this is me only, because it's not like you didn't have an opinion as
I'm
well.
trying to make out like it wasn't us two just bitching at each other.
Yeah, we kept thinking that we would be better cooks on the show. Pretty much. Because we just kept disagreeing with her ingredient amounts and her seasoning amounts and what she was doing with her drinks. It's like way too much fruit juice, not enough wine.
Yeah, she made like a
point,
wine
some
spritz and had like
spritzer.
five milliliters of wine in it. I was like, no, keep going.
She filled the whole glass up with like juice. It's like,
but it was I enjoyed the concept. I just think if Jennifer Hale knew how to cook a bit better, I think it would have pleased people like us who do know how to cook a little bit more.
yes.
Because we were just like, no, add more salt, more seasoning. Like, what are you doing?
Where's your garlic? Yeah, it was.
I didn't watch the cooking thing because I was like, well, that's not really my jam. So I knew if I did watch it, I'd be nothing but critical.
Well,
yeah, like I just had the
were.
whole thing on for like while it was happening. The first time it popped up, I had no idea what to expect, and I was just like, is this really happening right now?
Yes.
Like, am I actually watching a cooking show?
Well, and some of the recipes too were a bit questionable. And like the char barbecue was the first one, and they did like skewers, like kebabs, basically of like little pieces of meat. Like
did they call it
tiny?
Did they call it charbecue?
Yeah, char barbecue, I think is what they called it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, surely if you've been to Meattoberfest, you'll know that there's like huge hunks of meat there, and the char would not settle for little squares.
The thing that got me is, so they did the vegetarian Silvari one,
of course,
and the main course was literally just like cooked cactus. Like, just that's not a main course. No matter what you do,
it's
that
a
is
snack.
not a main course.
It's not even a snack. It's a novelty item that like tourist places will sell you in Texas, and no one really actually eats it.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
Really bad. So, but we liked the idea. We need to be the chefs or something. I don't know. Submit our own.
It was fun. I think it was just a bit of fun at the end of the day.
Yeah.
One thing I did really like was the musical pieces they had over the 2 days, the live music.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bit of a shame they did the same set on both days. I was really hoping for two different ones, but it was really good to hear. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that. Yeah. But the big stuff was the really meaty stuff we got was obviously the druid reveal. We got some information on raids from Crystal Reed and Mike Z. I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname.
Yeah.
And of course, the official Heart of Thorns launch trailer. So what do you guys think about the launch trailer? Is it a thumbs up, a thumbs down? Because
I liked it.
I didn't mind it.
It's super cool for what it is, like as a scene. But I kind of wanted to see a bit more variety shots out of the launch trailer. Personally, just showing more of the game overall.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I kept expecting it to ramp up to something bigger, and I felt like I never got we saw the massive vine monster at the end, but I just feel like I wanted more out. Like, it doesn't feel like a launch trailer to me. It just feels like something you'd show, like one of the end of season trailers, essentially.
What it
looks like.
Yeah.
The problem
That's a fair
I
point.
have with it is like the end scene was like perfect with that big thing. That should have been the finale of the trailer, but I feel like it's a trailer for people who have already bought the game. Like nobody knows who those characters are who hasn't bought the game yet, so you should be enticing them with something else.
I mean,
That's just
like,
what I thought.
they've got the whole of the jungle they could have shown. Like, if it just felt really kind of limiting because it was just one scene, one place, and just one little event that was happening. I'd have loved.
But it was Ritlock.
I
loved the
upside
Ritlock
to it.
part.
That I was happy that it was Ritlock, but even then, I think I just wanted to see more. I think, but it was good overall. I'm not, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it.
The style of it was really good. I liked their bit where they talked about how they made it, how they created it, and the company that put it together was a company called Axis, I believe, out of Scotland. So they did a really good job of just kind of bringing that to life, which was really cool, I thought. And plus, it had looking more badass.
I agree. Yeah. It was kind of interesting. Something I want to bring up about TwitchCon kind of being their biggest convention this year, in that it's where they released the most stuff, essentially. I know you had some stuff about this in the show notes earlier about contrasting it to like PAX and Gamescom. I kind of understand why they did it, like, because PAX and Gamescom, you're really only introducing it to the people there. With TwitchCon, they're streaming it to essentially everyone. I think it makes a lot more sense to do it that way, and I really enjoyed having like just 2 days to tune in and be fed a stream of like new information for across the weekend. So I really enjoyed it.
It was a pretty serious undertaking in terms of manpower and resources and time spent, and the fact that very little went wrong overall. Besides that game show, that was bad.
The lore quizzing.
I was so happy. Like, when some of those lore questions came up and I knew the answer, I was so happy. I was like, oh my god.
Oh man, that was a painful experience. But yeah, it was a way bigger con than, like, for instance, PAX Prime. Their presence was virtually non-existent at that one. So.
I mean, similarly to Gamescom, they were kind of just shoehorned into the edge of the Twitch booth at Gamescom. And Gamescom was good, but it didn't feel like they were particularly invested in it, because things like when you were queuing up, there were like scribbly notes written on like scrap pieces of cardboard to like point out things. You're like, I can't remember what it said because I think it was in German, but things like that just gives you an impression that they weren't particularly invested in that convention compared to like obviously TwitchCon, where they did the whole ArenaNet TV thing and got a lot of guilds involved actually. With their adverts.
I definitely feel like PAX East and TwitchCon were their two biggest, with TwitchCon obviously being their big holy crap con.
Holy crap con.
Holy crap con. Point.
I thought you were going for Holy Grail.
No, that would have been better.
Yeah.
I'll keep that one in the back pocket.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was I liked that they had a set schedule and that they were streaming different things or airing different things. I think the highlight for me, other than the cooking show, was the and what we learned about raids and druid, was watching Colin and the team dance as they were listening along to the live music. That was special.
That was that made my weekend.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
good. It was good. It was good. They had fun, and it looked like they had fun. So yay.
There's a GIF floating around somewhere. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was uploaded pretty quickly to Reddit. If I remember like refreshing and slashing you like it's got to be here in a minute, and it was already there. So
yep.
So yeah, TwitchCon was a good experience. Shall we move on then?
Yeah, we can start. Go ahead.
I was going to say to some of the stuff we learned from TwitchCon.
Yes, one of the first things that we learned about with raids was the whole enhanced squad UI, which has been the big talk of this weekend since it killed raids.
Yeah, it did.
It did. It was sad. But
so
one of the things that I struck me about the enhanced UI is just how complex it is, and how much information and how much the commanders are actually able to do with it. Like being able to create subdivisions, create leaders for their little subdivisions, being able to talk to each subdivision separately if they want to. But the way that it interacts with the party system, or doesn't interact with the party system, I think is the big deal, and is the thing that sounds like it was what was breaking the game, pretty much.
Yeah.
But without it, I like the fact that if you saw the blog post earlier this week, which I will link into chat right now, you can see a screenshot of the squad party UI on the right and the left hand side, and you see all those, the greens they can tell what professions are in and what their health is like.
Yeah.
And in one of the videos that's floating around on YouTube from the raids, you can see how helpful it actually will be for the squad to be able to see what's happening with people's health and how much damage they're taking, who needs healing, things like that. Because without it, you're kind of,
you're a Zerg.
Yeah. It just brings kind of more structure to being in a squad, rather than it just feeling like a massive party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are just more tools, and it just makes things easier. And I like that they're using it in raids as well, rather than like a separate system. Because I think incorporating like being a commander in a raid, just thematically as well as like in terms of the tool set, just feels right.
Yeah, and one of the options is that you're able to create a squad, and then there's an option to tick, like you can set up that we are a squad for raiding, as opposed to something else.
Well, and like thank the 6 for raids, because I feel like without raids we would never have gotten like a squad UI at all. Like they would never have implemented that just for World v World. They don't care. I feel like they don't care enough about that game mode.
Although this came out of one of the CDIs?
Did it?
I believe so. I remember that I think it was the commander one, and please correct me if I'm wrong, chat, because I'm going off memory. That's a little bit, But in one of the CDIs, which I believe was the commander one, they talked about being able to give the commander more control over what information they can get through the squad UI, like how much supply people are carrying, things like that. So to see that they did take some of that feedback to bring this to life, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I really think the decision to go with raids really helped the squad UI really get the attention it deserved and help deliver us what is in theory a good product.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once they get it working, I think it will be pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
In game.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I did want to bring up is, I mean, I get that it's a beta weekend, things are meant to break, but a bug or like a glitch on this scale, surely that's something you should pick up earlier than...
Yeah, like, you should pick that up internally.
It broke the entire game, essentially. It could not be on and the game functioning. So
yeah,
I feel like a few times now I've pulled up the QA side of all the new features that come out, and just needing more thorough testing. And it's one of the downsides of outsourcing your QA, not having it internally. I imagine it's just a longer process to get things done when it's outsourced. I mean, not being a game developer and not particularly knowing about the industry, but that's just my opinion on it. But yeah, it would be nice if we had like a 4th beta weekend for raids, because only a few groups of people got to do the raids. There are very limited sort of videos and people talking about the raids because people just couldn't get in. I was really looking forward to being able to test raids. Anyone who's watched previous podcasts knows how enthusiastic I am about raids. So I would like to see a 4th beta weekend before the game ships, which is less than a month away now.
Yeah.
I don't know how many days away it is, but it's
19
creeping up. something like that. That's
something like that. 23 minus 4. Yeah.
yes,
18 days.
yeah. So it's creeping up quite quickly.
Yeah.
It is. It's going to be here sooner than we know it, and I just hope everything works.
Yeah, I really hope there's not a repeat of the core games launch where half the things break and then are broken for a number of weeks and months. I mean, the events in Ore were like the temple events were broken for I can't remember how long.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully it's a nice smooth launch. Everyone's happy, and when they turn on raids after Heart of Thorns launches, it's all good.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about raids in depth in a little bit, but before we do that, we have the
Druid.
There we go.
The Druid is available for beta testing.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this beta weekend event. Obviously, they revealed it at TwitchCon, and people were like, the impression I got was that the community was relatively divided over the Druid's kind of spec and what it's supposed to do, because it's like full heal basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, here, have all the heals and then an auto attack if you want to hit things, and a lot of people are feeling like it's not going to be necessary. And so what happened was, now that people have played it, that's more or less the impression everyone's giving, is that it's just not particularly pertinent to the content. And I wrote a piece on this last week, because I kind of thought, hey, maybe with the radical change of enemies and combat in Heart of Thorns, this will be pertinent. But I've gotten to play not a lot of the Druid, but a bit of it, and I'm just not seeing it there. It doesn't feel, going full Druid at least, I don't feel is warranted in any situation.
Yeah, do you want to go before I?
My main is a ranger. When the nose of the Druid came out as being pretty much healer, I was sad. I'm not gonna lie.
I play a DPS ranger.
Yeah, and I'm so offensive minded as a player that even my support, what I consider my support characters, still put out damage, because I figure, you know what, you need to be helping. That's just the way that's just how I play. So I did take out the Druid, and I was still felt like I was playing. I wanted my traps, but I started using the glyphs that do damage, that daze and cause some cripple and some bleeds. I tried to trade up for those things as well, and it's still, I could see how it would be helpful and keep you feeling like you're contributing, but I don't know that the damage is enough to feel like it's enough of a contribution.
Yeah. No, it's...
Yeah.
The glyphs are almost useless, like entirely useless, I think. Like the range on them is
small
pretty
radius.
poor.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no reason to bring most of them compared to the other utility skills a ranger has, even if you're playing a druid as like full support healy druid. You want to have things like Frost Spirit to buff party damage.
Which is why I think people will bring Glyph of Empowerment, because that's just a flat 10% boost to your party's damage, which is, hey, why not?
Right.
That's the only glyph I brought with me. Even then, that's like a 6 second.
It's not terribly long. Yeah.
No, it needs to be longer, I think, because it's got, I think, is it a 20-second cooldown? Something like that. I can't remember on top of my head.
I think I think it's 20 seconds.
But I mean, it's 6 seconds, and even like the AoE around it isn't that big. If you're in like a 10-man raid, unless you are like stacked up, then I don't think.
And that's how.
You know.
That's how the was it? I'm gonna screw up their guild name. The Guardians one that shared theirs. They ran, I think, at least one druid, and that druid was in the mix.
Yeah.
The entire time, not kind of mid melee.
Yeah. So Jarkor in chat says they've severely nerfed the enemies in the new map by accident. It shouldn't be as easy as it is now. So yes, that is a thing. But even with the higher difficulty, because I mean we've played beta weekend 1 and 2. We know what the actual difficulty of them is. Open world druid is just not needed in any shape or form. For that, like just healing the Zerg is just not needed because the Zerg heals itself. Like there's players that go down in it because of poor positioning or because you don't dodge or whatever, and as a druid you can't out heal that anyway. That's just not the way it's designed, unless you like go into celestial form and just blow absolutely everything. So when you're in open world and Zerg, you might as well. It's the Zerker meta still in the open world. Just because they're trying to get rid of it in raids doesn't mean that it's not going to exist elsewhere in the game. And I think in open world, druid is pretty useless. Even in dungeons, I would, if I was doing like the way I do dungeons, like trying to speed clear it as fast as I can, I would not bring a druid with me.
Well, and it's like the stuff is hard for us now because we haven't had nearly enough time to really get the hang of it. But once people know this content like the back of their hand, of course they're going to run Zerk,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just generally, like, there's enough water fields, self fields, regen boons in an open world Zerg as it is, I think. That said, raiding wise is where I do think the druid has potential to shine. So going by the Ethereal Guardians Veil video, that's the name of the guild.
Thank you.
I think I have a link to it in the show notes somewhere. So they, like Sandra said, they did have a druid, and throughout the raid they were calling out their status of their health and if they needed healing or not, to kind of help them get out of tough situations, keep them topped up, that kind of thing.
The thing about that is, since you can't select hotbar heal in Guild Wars 2, so you still need to look with your eyes, find that person, and go and heal them if you're spread out in any capacity, which delays the entire process significantly.
Absolutely. So I've played Druid a little bit this beta weekend, and I've formed a massive list of notes that I wanted to go through. So this might be a bit long-winded and contrived in places, but this is just kind of like my general thoughts on Druids and how they fit into everything. So obviously a lot of people have been talking about Druids on Reddit, and I saw a lot of comments and a couple of threads dedicated to about their poor healing power scaling. Obviously, as a dedicated healer class, people don't necessarily understand why. So before I played Druid, it was my kind of original feeling that if Druids scaled horribly with healing power, they just wouldn't be useful, because they just wouldn't be able to do enough to compensate for their lack of damage, essentially. But in reality, having actually played it, the fact that healing power does scale horribly on them is actually a really smart thing that ArenaNet have done. This is going on purely if you're a Druid raiding. So it might take a while to explain, but do bear with me. I promise I am getting to a solid point at the end of this. And feel free to share, disagree with me, whatever, your opinions in chat, and you too as we go along as well. If I'm rambling, do stop me, because this might be like one of those times.
Okay.
So this is my overall take on Druids and just like a general healing class in Guild Wars 2. So to put healing power into context on how it scales on a Druid, so 0 healing power versus 1100. So the number 1 skill, you'll heal for 66 per tick with 0. If you have 1100 healing power, you'll heal for 88. Not much difference. Number 2 skill, you'll heal for 322 or 378. 50 odd health difference. Again, it's nothing. To pull out number 6 skill, your self-heal skill. So to heal yourself, it's 4.8k versus 5.9k. So there's a bit there, but it's only like 1100.
It's not enough to like swing it in the favor of the Druid. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So the point is that it just doesn't scale at all. But it's honestly really not a bad thing that it doesn't scale, because the notion of a dedicated healer in Guild Wars 2 just will never work because of the way the game's designed. First of all, like Aaron pointed out, there's no like point and click, here I'll top up your health bar kind of thing. Everyone is forced to take a self-heal, and everyone is responsible for avoiding damage and mitigating it, wherever they can, because it's just built into every class, and it's built into the dodge mechanic, and it's just built into the way the game's designed. So keeping yourself alive is your responsibility. Unlike other MMOs, if you're a DPS class, being kept alive is kind of a split between you not doing something stupid and the healer keeping you topped off and, you know, alive. Guild Wars 2 is completely on you. And just the content itself is designed not to need a healer. In other MMOs, content is designed to need a healer or you will not succeed. So the way I see it is a druid is absolutely not a full-time dedicated healer, because you just can't have one in Guild Wars 2. It is designed to be a healer, but it's not expected that person running a druid will just stay as a healer with their staff out with, you know, the celestial avatar. You need to be doing more than that. You need to contribute to the raid's damage first and foremost, because the enrage timer for the Veil Guardian is only 8 minutes, and as the first boss it should be relatively easy of a raid because it's kind of introducing players to it, but I've seen people severely struggling to kind of meet the DPS requirement of that already. So because healing... Ooh, I've just dropped my pen. Because healing power scales so badly, it means that players of a druid can then spec into damage without losing anything, because you're not going to spec into healing power because it does nothing. So you may as well spec into damage to be able to support your raid that way. So essentially the druid then becomes not a dedicated healer, but kind of a DPS support healer hybrid, where for the first time in Guild Wars 2, your kind of support area is truly defined. When we say, like, at the moment, oh yeah, there's like a soft trinity of, like, you know, support, control, damage, whatever, druid is the first class to actually have a truly defined supporting role, rather than just like, oh yeah, I've got like a reflection wall and I can give you might and that kind of thing. So as a druid, it's kind of your job to keep people topped off in the raid and try and ease the pressure of the raid during, you know, difficult situations where there's a lot of damage coming in. But it's not your job to stop someone from dying like a normal traditional MMO healer, because you, like we were saying before we came on, you just don't have any emergency heals that can stop somebody from dying. It's absolutely on each individual to still keep themselves alive. So that's kind of what I think is good about the druid, is that they've made it a healer, but they haven't made it try to make it a dedicated healer, because it just doesn't fit into the game. It has enough heals just across the board, like base stat wise, to be able to heal people, but it then doesn't scale because they don't want you to spec into healing power, because you need to be there damaging as well. I think if you're playing a druid, I think you'd be doing it wrong if you were even healing like 50% of the time. I'd say, like, I don't know, like 30-70% split maybe between damage and healing.
30 for the heal.
Yeah, 30 for the heal. Because the enrage timers, you just need that damage, because in raids, what it looks like is the enrage is one of the primary mechanics, rather than typically in other raids, you learn the fight, you learn all the really difficult mechanics, and then the enrage timer kicks in. You're like, oh, okay, we can't kill it in time now. We've learned how to do the fight, but we can't kill it in time. In this raid, it's like the enrage timer, first of all, is right on the top right of your screen, so it's counting down every second, and it's one of the primary mechanics to overcome, because the actual other mechanics in the Veil Guardian raid aren't that difficult.
No, they're not very different from normal boss fights.
No, exactly.
But
so that's my take on the druid. I think raids, yes, it has a place if you're playing it correctly and not just trying to be a pure healer. Anywhere else in PvE, I don't think it has a place. World v World, maybe. I'm not a World v World player, but I can't really comment on that one.
That was a point I was going to bring up. Is I see it shining, like it could work as a bunker in PvP, but healing's not as great for bunkering as just mitigation and toughness, because it's all about lasting till your heal recharges. WW, however, AoE heals can really do a lot of good in Zerg versus Zerg fights. They can really help swing those. So that's the game mode I see the druid really flourishing in.
Yeah. So you played a bit of druid, Sandra.
I did.
How did you feel, kind of open world wise, or just generally?
Open world. As I said, I'm more of an offensive minded, so for me, switching over to support, I tried it out. We went and did some steps that we were like in grouped, but it's just either because I think three of the 5 staff skills are ground targeted. I think it's a 3 is the gap closer. You've got to aim a couple of them, and they've got small radius on them. One of them is like 120 or something like that, so it's a really small radius. So you've got to make sure that you're positioned well, aiming correctly. So that's going to be something to get used to. But I mean, again, it's something that you get used to it and you practice, and it'll work. I just don't know that it's going to overcome or bring anything different healing wise than what we can already do. I used the healing glyph, and it worked okay. I kind of took my little beta ranger to the edge a couple of times, fighting some Hylek, and you know, it did all right, but I don't know. And there were times where I was feeling like I could have been using a better heal. I swapped out the elite because the elite is more of a party heal support. So I just went back to using, what is it, Rampage's one, which is now called something else. But because of the buffs, the boons that you get, and it felt more useful in the open world to have boons that support your damage output rather than.
I think even going in, like playing a druid in a raid, I think having boons that support party damage, and not just being like a defensive support class. They have the glyph that, like we were saying earlier, buffs party damage. Frost Spirit, I think, is a really good to bring as a druid. But yeah, I think as Jocko pointed out in chat, I feel like every specialization doesn't have to be good in all 3 game modes.
Exactly.
It sucks people who exclusively play one, but as long as it has a place in at least one game mode, I think it's fine. It's when it has no place in any of them that becomes a problem.
Well, and as long as you like at least one thing from the spec that you want to take from it, then the spec has a place in gameplay. Like if you like, if there's one thing on Druid that's just super meta, and it's like, yes, that's the thing to take, everyone will take Druid. Everyone will be a Druid, even if they're not playing 95% of the specialization.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one question I wanted to put to you guys is, will Druid be a necessity for raiding? Are we going to be seeing like looking for groups spammed up with like looking for Druid to go ! You know, with like 1 million of them and nobody running Druid?
Yeah.
Do you think that would happen?
I don't see it happening. I think they'll be useful as like, oh, okay, we have got a Druid, that'll help. But I don't know that it wouldn't be like a necessity, like you're saying. With how tight the enrage timer is on these bosses, and obviously we'll figure out way more optimal ways of downing them, but I just don't know where the Druid's going to fit into that.
I think where it really shine is learning parties for raids, because if you like mess up on one mechanic, the Druid can just like help top you back up. And I think in kind of the highest tier of raiding, I don't think it will even be needed, because everyone will know the mechanics off by heart. You'll be able to just dodge out of everything or avoid everything.
Yeah.
Unless there's like a special mechanic somewhere where you have to take a bunch of damage for whatever reason.
Well, I was going to say, unless they start adding in raid-wide damage, which is pretty common in other raids and other games, where the whole party just takes damage for no particular reason. There's nothing you can really do to stop it. Unless that happens and it's at a frequency that there's no way between you could out-heal it without a Druid. Because, I mean, we've still got things like Guardians and, you know, Water Elementalists, all that kind of thing. You know, we still have regen as a boon. It's not like Druid is the only thing that can heal.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to take a couple of healers from other classes and mix in a druid in there, I think it would help in that sense. But how many healers are you going to need?
Yeah. I honestly think you'd be better covered with a Revenant, because you'll get a decent amount of healing plus a lot more mitigation and boons.
There was one raid video that I watched that they took in a Revenant, and that Revenant had Ventari slotted in, and let me tell you, it was helping because they were wiping a lot. And anytime, not wiping, they were going down a lot, but anytime someone went down, he'd go in with Ventari, put the little bubble shield to protect, and res, or, you know, get them off downed. And so that was obviously helpful to that group. I don't know what else was going on, what other specializations people had taken in. But
yeah.
I mean, how do you think a druid would compare with, say, a Ventari or some of the other Revenant, like a Glint? I mean, you guys played Glint a bit more than I have.
Yeah. I play, as a Revenant, I play Glint like exclusively offensively. I mean, yeah, it's great that I'm helping other people, but I'm primarily doing it to... So the way I built my Revenant in this beta weekend was I built it with Knights, I think. I didn't go full Zerker.
I played a Knights Revenant beta weekend too.
I think I played Knights, and then I just Glint and Shiro, and I found that with Glint's Fury and Might upkeeps, I was doing like as much damage as full Zerker anyway. Yeah. So what was the point we were going on before I went off?
How would some of the other Revenant things help instead of a druid, or in combination with?
Yeah, I think if you want,
Herald is really strong support.
It is. I thought.
Yeah, I think if you need, if you feel like your raid group or whatever needs a healer, I think you need someone who, like I said earlier, is going to be DPSing 75% of the time and can just dip in and out of healing. Ventari I haven't played with on the Revenant yet, so I can't particularly comment on that one. Ellie, Water, I think just taking Ellie will be fine. Like, you don't even...
Tempest has really good... The Tempest Overload is a really good party-wide healing thing.
So there you go. And I think, like I said, I think the way to think about it is, I don't need a healer, I need another damage dealer who can heal when needed.
Right.
I think that's the mindset everyone needs to get into, especially with Druid. I think because the way they've kind of presented it as just this straight up healer, and people are thinking, oh, I'm going to main this healer, that's what this class is all about. I think you just need to step back and realise that it just won't work in most situations.
The game isn't built that way.
That's that's the thing about the game. Support works best when everybody is chipping in a little bit towards the whole party-wide support. That's what works in Guild Wars 2. And the combat system fundamentally supports that. No matter how much they try to tweak it for Heart of Thorns, it's still going to be the same combat system that rests on those principles.
Yeah, see. And just to bring up one point, Kiki Bowman says, Glint is hard to keep up DPS with all the boons up. That's why you don't have all the boons up.
Yeah. If you're gonna
just have the... Go on.
If you're gonna put all the boons up on Glint, just auto attack.
Yeah. I have the Might and the Fury boons up only on Glint, and then you still get 1 pip of regen, so you're not wasting away to nothing on your energy. I was actually thinking about posting my build somewhere, because I think it's quite a good build. Tanky with a lot of damage, but that's beside the point.
Well, but we'll see too. I mean, they're gonna keep making adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something I was building to kind of... I built it thinking, I'm going to take this into a raid, and then I found out they were disabled, and I just stuck with it instead of going back to Zerker. Speaking of raids then, let's talk about what we can to do with raids, considering all 3 of us didn't get to play it.
No, I know, it's sad.
Which was really sad. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to before it launches. So the first raid is called Spirit Veil. It has 4 wings, where your task is to search for missing pact soldiers who've disappeared. So for people like... So Sandra, you haven't raided in the MMO before.
I have not.
You're a raiding newbie, so I thought just explain a little bit about maybe terms people don't know what they mean, that kind of thing, because I had to explain it to Sandra to begin with. So the first raid is comprised of 4 wings. A wing is an instance, basically, with essentially a boss that you kill. In the first wing, which is what people have been playing through, no one's cleared the first wing yet. There are 3 what we call, I don't know if they're classed as trash mobs in this because they're just mini bosses, but normally in a typical raid you'll have just like a group of mobs that you have to kill before you get up to the main boss. In the first wing of this one, you have 3 mini bosses, a blue, green, and red guardians that you have to kill before you then encounter the big boss, the Veil Guardian, which kind of takes the mechanics from all those 3 previous mini bosses and encompasses it into one enraging 8-minute boss. So it was unfortunately disabled. Obviously, there are small amounts of footage going around, so everything we're going to be talking about is basically based on what we've watched, some YouTube videos, that kind of thing. So there is somebody did post a raid guide to kind of the first few, the red, blue, and green guardians on Reddit. I think the day it came out and was available to play. So some of the mechanics involved are things like the blue guardian has an invulnerability boon, which basically will not take any damage unless you remove this boon with someone with a skill that removes them. Which is I think it's kind of nice to involve things like that. It's like it's not forcing you to bring like skills or people, but it's like, what am I trying to say? Well, it kind of is. But
boon removal isn't terribly common, so I'd say it is more or less.
It's like I think it's a nice way to ensure people have like a specific role in the party. Like, oh, I'll be the one to bring boon removal. Like you can say that's like 2 or 3 people. I think
it's more that it sets up that you need to bring a certain profession because you can still retrait and re-gear in between encounters. So as long as you've got a mesmer along.
Yeah. There you go. And so other ones, they have big AoE that I think 5 players have to stand in, or it does a lot of damage. If less than 5 people stand in it, I think it will. I'm not sure if it splits the damage or if it'll just outright kill any less than 5 players. Typically in other raids, if you have something you need to stand in with a certain amount of people, it's because the damage is split between those people. I'm not sure if that's how it works in this one or not. I guess we'll find out soon enough.
So they're encouraging stacking now.
What the Red Guardian is has physical immunity, so it only really takes condition damage. I was watching one Zerka Revenant hitting it for like 50 odd, well not even that high, I don't think it was like 30, 20 odd at a time. So it's like funneling, okay, we need a certain amount of condition damage people, we need a certain amount of non-condition damage people. Well,
and that also depends on how many people the bosses are scaled for DPS-wise. If it's a Condi boss and it's scaled for 10 people, then you're going to need everybody on Condi damage, which means people are going to start having to bring multiple gear sets on raids, which isn't going to be fun.
Or food. I mean, the Guardian group guild, they brought in some Condi food as well, and that helped them a bit.
More or less, it's just going to result in in Sinister being superior to Zerker in the meta.
Which is
at least in the raid meta.
Right.
I mean, potentially. I think everyone going Condi damage would just not work. Because there's only so many conditions you can apply.
Or Celestial, Berserker or Celestial or Sinister, those will all come into play with this Condi damage spec boss, and then these other 2 bosses where direct damage might work better.
Didn't they also introduce another, what is it, Nomads?
Nomads.
Yep, we lost Rowan.
Did we lose Rowan?
Did
he run away?
Yeah, we lost your webcam. There we go.
I don't know what happened. It's done that twice now. I swear I didn't get it earlier.
Your webcam is throwing a fit with your internet, apparently.
Yeah.
I love the internet of this new house. I just love it.
No, but Nomads is a full tank gear set, which is, I think its major is healing power and its minors are toughness and vitality.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't really, unless there's a place where you really need someone to just sit there and eat damage, I don't know where that's going to come in.
I know, but I mean, they introduced it into the game.
With Silver Waste, yeah.
With Silver Waste, and it's, I mean, you can buy stuff for like coppers on the trading post because.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because they're overfarmed. Because they're overfarmed to hell. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Is anyone using it? That's my question.
No.
Would it
I can answer that.
Yeah, I mean,
it
seems like a gear set that was introduced, and it's like, why?
People use it to troll in World v World, and I know people would love to be able to use it in PvP to troll, but it's not available in PvP right now.
Okay.
But it's a troll gear set, more or less, right now.
You're such a creative bunch.
So like we were mentioning earlier, the Veil Guardian, the final boss, has an 8-minute. I think it's 8 minutes. I couldn't quite tell from the video, but it looks like it's an 8-minute enrage timer. Where if you don't kill it in that 8 minutes, obviously you will wipe. So in a game where you can't really measure your DPS like accurately, is this appropriate having such a tight enrage timer? Because this is like, from what I see, this is the thing that makes the Veil Guardian difficult. The mechanics themselves are not difficult.
Yeah.
What was the wipe timer on Twisted Marionette? Do you guys remember?
Oh man, that was like, it was longer than 8 minutes.
It was longer than 8 minutes. I'm pretty sure. I want to say it was like around 15. Was it? Was it double at least?
Yeah.
Does anyone in chat remember? Yeah, it's. I don't know.
I mean, the thing about doing a wipe in rage time, whatever, in open world is that it must there's no way. So the thing about an enrage timer in a raid group, if you're in like a static raid group that does it every week,
it's a carefully controlled environment.
In other MMOs, if you're measuring DPS as an enrage timer and someone's DPS isn't up to par, you just get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because you can't clear the content with that person in the raid group. In Guild Wars 2, there is no way to measure DPS. So what happens if your raid group can't clear the Veil Guardian because you're hitting enrage every time? How do you know who's holding you back?
Right.
There's going to be a lot of trial and error in figuring out this raid.
Exactly. So how appropriate is it for Guild Wars 2 to have such tight enrage timers? I think.
Well, it's appropriate in the context of the content. Raiding is supposed to be the end game, super hard, elite level content, and I think in that context, it's fine to have to beat your head against it, many times. The rage charmers are really lax in like open world, and I think they might appear in dungeons in a few places. Those ones are super lax, and you can breeze through those no problem. But I think in a raid scenario, it really needs to be as tight an enrage timer as they put on it if they're going to go with that mechanic. I certainly don't think every boss should have an enrage timer. That would get old as hell.
No, I don't think any MMO has every raid boss with an enrage timer.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying, like the enrage timer is basically the primary mechanic for the Veil Guardian. Aside, I'd say primary because it's the things everyone was struggling with, because all the other mechanics are so. Typically in other MMOs, it's never the primary thing you have to contest with. It's always like the thing at the end where you've dealt with all the mechanics, you've learned the raid, and now it's just a question of learning how to best do your rotation in that specific instance. So, I don't know. Do you think we're going to see the emergence of any third-party DPS meters with raiding? I mean, it's not
I think so.
everything that don't allow it, but do you think people will use them? Do you think the community will use them?
Yeah, I do. At an elite level, yeah, absolutely. I think people, if it's just an overlay, you can just pop up. Yeah,
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Especially if they're having a rage timers like they do, I think it'll be a necessity. Because if I was a raid leader and we were wiping on Veil Guardian because of the enrage, I would be looking at who I could replace.
Right.
To put it bluntly.
Jackar brings up that on the platforms there was 2 minutes to kill all their bosses and destroy the generator. So it was 2 minutes.
So yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I think
I don't. Yeah, I remember it
open
being a
world-
small.
On the platform, yes,
Yes.
but I mean the event overall was
Right, the event
sort of
overall,
a
but-
bit longer.
Yeah.
I remember people. I mean, the platforms were the key. I mean, yeah, you had to hold your lanes and clear, but it was if you didn't, if a platform group failed, you know, it wasn't usually going to succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the third-party DPS meters, do you think if people started using them, ArenaNet would punish them? Because you know how they feel currently about, you know, third-party things in Guild 2. They want as clean a UI as possible. They don't want you to be looking at DPS meters or HPS meters or, you know, aggro tables or anything like that. They said that when Guild Wars 2 was released.
As far as I'm aware, as long as it's merely an overlay and they're not actually augmenting the game client itself, they really can't do anything to stop you. Like, there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're actually augmenting the game, then you're hacking, and they will ban you.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see them maybe partying up with like Overwolf again to do some kind of official. Perhaps.
I don't think they would. I think they were so firm on we don't want this to be about DPS and all this kind of thing.
But it's kind of become about DPS,
I was
hasn't
going
it?
to say they went about it the wrong way then.
Yeah.
I
Because
I
that's-
think I honestly don't believe they'd ever go for it. 'Cause, I mean, so an example I have in the show notes.
I don't
in
think
Final
they'll
Fantasy-
sanction will.
No. In Final Fantasy 14, the raids are all about DPS checks. But there's a thing called Advanced Combat Tracker, which is essentially an overlay that is a DPS meter and tracks DPS, heals per second, like crit chance, all the kind of stuff you should know about how you're performing. Square Enix do not support it. If you are found to be using it, your account can get banned.
Wow.
But they know it exists, and they design raids around it.
Right.
Because all their raids, well, most of their raids have DPS checks, and the only way to overcome DPS checks when you're not performing is to kick the lowest DPS and replace them. And how do you know who's the lowest DPS? You need a DPS parser.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird mix that they have going on. And I was just wondering if that would ever kind of emerge with ArenaNet, where on like an official level, if you're found to be using it, you'll be banned because it's against the rules. But they know that the majority of raiders are using it, and they design content around it.
It's possible. Yeah. Because the
Yeah, I think
third-party
it's-
programs will definitely pop up, so
Yeah.
it just depends
Yeah.
how they feel about them.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know.
wait and see, I guess.
Yeah,
I think it's
pretty much.
interesting.
I find it doubtful that ArenaNet will ever, like you said, like Final Fantasy doesn't support that one. I don't think ArenaNet will support it just because the attitude it promotes, and like they haven't put gear score in the game, so.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess just have to wait and see after Heart of Thorns comes out.
Yeah. And
So-
hopefully, the when we do get to test raids, when everything is fixed, hopefully we'll be able to have a better sense of what kind of damage output you're going to need with that
Yeah,
with that
absolutely.
short timer.
So the final question that I wanted to put to you guys about raids before we wrap up is, we were talking a little bit about this before the show, is, do you think this is the end of the Zerka meta, like they were claiming it to be for raids? We talked a little bit about it at the moment. The first boss, the Veil Guardian, at the moment doesn't particularly look like it. I think once you've learned the fight, you could quite happily go in there as a Zerka. What do you guys
I think it, if it's got such a small timer, right? 8 minutes, you said.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be taking it down. So how does that discourage a pure Zerker?
Here's what I think. I don't think it's the end of the Zerker meta specifically. I think it's the beginning of the multiple gear set meta, is what I think it is. Because if the bosses are this radically different in the same raid, if multiple bosses in the same raid wing are this radically different, to do it at the very most optimal level, people are going to be switching gear sets. Because gear sets affect stats so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
completely
think
agree.
I think multiple gear sets is going to become the elite way to do raids.
Do we think Zerka will be unsurvivable for most people in later raids? Because I think that's what Crystal Reed, I think it was said, essentially only the top tier players will be able to successfully run full Zerka in taking the raids as a whole.
I think, yeah, I think it will be good in some encounters and bad in others. Like, I think there will be certain boss encounters that are just designed fundamentally in a way where you can't do it Zerker. Like, there will be some hard toughness mechanic or something like that in certain fights. Certainly not in all fights, but...
I mean, already in the Veil Guardian, you've got the red Guardian who's only takes condition damage. So
yeah,
already it's not a full 10 raid of Zerkers already.
Yep.
I guess something. See, I had something else in my mind I was going to bring up, and I've completely lost it.
Was it perhaps the... I know you brought up Crystal Reed just now, and I think the quote you meant was her quote about the Ascended Armor being necessary for raids versus exotic
That was
armor.
what I was going to bring up. That wasn't about it, but I was going to talk about that as well. So yeah, so there was a bit of a hoo-ha in the community, as there always is, with so Black Lion Chest essentially on Twitter with Crystal Reed, and she said Ascended Gear, she appeared to say Ascended Gear will be necessary for raiding. And then we had a big discussion in the GuildMag chat about it, and even like when everyone else was blowing up, I was like, well, no, it's not. It just won't be, because the stats just aren't that much different from exotic. So to clear everything up, Ascended Gear is not required for raiding. It will be helpful, but
it'll be helpful within rage timers as tight as the one on the Veil Guardian. Absolutely. But not necessary to a T.
Yeah.
No.
She did say it was for the final boss.
But even then...
But I mean, how...
stat-wise, each piece is only like a couple of % better than their exotic counterpart. So, and I was saying to Draxnick I think like a couple of days ago, that player skill means much more than if you're in Ascended or exotic. If you're in Ascended and you have just a really bad rotation of skills and you're not optimizing, because there's always an optimal way for how much damage you can output, right? If you're doing it in the worst way possible, then even if you're in Ascended gear, your damage will be lower than if you're in exotic gear. Yeah. So I think it would be down to like that much if they were truly balancing it around Ascended being an absolute requirement. And you'd have to assume that every player going in there was doing their DPS rotation as best as possible perfectly for the entire encounter to even begin, unless they do some sort of infusion system, which I think they denied.
They did.
Well, that's the thing is, if you have full Ascended trinkets and gear versus exotic, it's about a 5% stat increase. But if you've got, then you can get all your attribute infusions too, which adds like another couple % on, and that's where you start getting into a serious advantage over exotic, and it really could lead to these the raiding meta becoming like people will make you ping all your Ascended gear before you pop into the raid.
So another thing I want to bring up is I'm thinking of all these things that I didn't write down in the show notes. So if Ascended gear does become essentially a requirement, is this okay for people who don't have Ascended gear? Because we were talking a bit about this as well, for people who want to experience the raid but don't have Ascended gear, feel like wouldn't be able to complete it, wouldn't be able to do the story, that kind of thing. Would it be okay?
I mean,
yes. It's fine.
See that? That's what I think.
Yeah, the thing is that there are a lot of casual players in Guild Wars 2 community, and even though they may not be classed as the elite players, doesn't mean that they're not interested in at least checking out raids and trying them out. You know what I mean?
And that'll result in them getting their faces smashed.
Well, yes, yes, pretty much. But how puggable will raids be? I mean, they
won't be.
Well,
the first one might be.
Yeah,
they'll be meta puggable. but you'll have to be conforming to a predetermined meta.
You would have to know what you're doing. It's not Puggle in the sense, form a group, go in, see what happens. You would not succeed. You'd have to know the mechanics.
It's puggable in the same way that, like, scale 50 fractals are puggable, in that everybody who's pugging that pretty much knows it like the back of their hand and can do it to a T.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hate it. I always hate it when people are like, but what if it's too hard for me? It's like, spoiler alert, it's a game.
Yeah.
It increases in difficulty.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what my argument was.
Your camera, Rowan.
Oh,
I don't.
It's throwing a fit. It doesn't want to talk to the internet.
Oh, I can't wait for my to be upgraded. So is anyone wondering, I moved back to uni did I move back this week? It was this week.
It was this
which is why my internet's gone so bad, and which is why Sandra's hosting the stream for now, because my internet is atrocious.
Yes.
I was going to say, yeah, so my argument was raids are meant to be the hardest content in the game. Only the best players should be able to enter and complete it. But I think to go alongside that, there should be an option, because there are big story elements to the raid. I think everyone should be able to access them and complete it to understand the story.
Like
maybe there should be a
story mode?
Yeah, like an easy mode.
An easy
mode? There should be like a story / easy and
where you can go through
/ hard mode.
And you don't have like your easy mode won't have access to the incredible rewards or anything. You might get a couple champ bags or whatever.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that is a necessity for raids, and honestly, it's not. I don't think it's planned at the moment or going to be implemented, but I honestly think that is the best way to go about it, pleasing both crowds. Because Guild Wars 2 is a game with a lot of people like you who haven't played many other MMOs, don't raid. I don't like calling them casuals because I feel like that's a derogative term like that, but they are just casual players that don't spend a lot of time, doing things. They're not bothered about being like the best and speedrunners and like top of the meta or all that kind of thing. And I think people like that still deserve to be able to experience the story of raids, because the way they've been talking about it is there are big sort of kind of story elements to this raid and things that as a player you'd want to know. So I definitely think like a story and explorable mode would be the way to go with reduced rewards for the story mode.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a way to let everyone experience some of the content.
Guys, I think Rowan has been reduced to a single pixel.
Yes. Your camera's just so bad. Poor internet.
Sorry.
1 pixel.
It will be fixed soon, I promise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's about everything we were going to talk about. Do either of you two have anything you'd like to bring up?
No, I think we covered everything that we wanted to say today about everything. I'm excited. I hope that they'll have, like you said, a beta weekend for raiding, because I don't think that one day will satisfy the curiosity and the desire of players.
I need a weekend. I need to experience it before Heart of Thorns comes out.
Yeah, I want to jump in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do as well.
So
yeah, please read it. Beta weekend 4 before it comes out. And that's about it for this episode. So next week we're going to be talking about Guild Week if we don't get anything new over the next 7 days. If we do, we'll try and cram both of them into it. We've still got a lot to cover.
We'll make it work.
We will. So we will be back next week, Sunday, 8 PM GMT / 1 PM Pacific time. If you're in the UK, you're looking at me like I've said that wrong.
No, you're fine.
No, you're fine.
If you're in the UK, that's 9 PM for the next few weeks until we move back an hour. So yeah, please do come and join us live, twitch.tv/GuildMag. If you're watching this and you haven't yet pre-purchased Heart of Thorns, what you're doing, there's a link somewhere up there. If you type that into your address bar, you can pre-purchase Heart of Thorns and support GuildMag at the same time, because we are part of the ArenaNet partnership program. So yeah, I guess we'll see everyone in a week's time.
Yeah.
So bye guys.
Bye.